Next, we'll have Deputy Superintendent Scott Jones and Assistant Superintendent Darren Nielsen. We'll talk about the legislative audit report.
I'm trying to pull. Jeff was supposed to join us too.
Grab him.
Yeah. Chair, can Jeff join us as well? He was scheduled. Okay. Yes, ma'am.
So will the USIMS and all the licensure information within it then be a replacement for Cactus? So we'll have all the financial
It'll
information and the
replace-
licensure information in the same system?
Sure, yeah. So it'll both replace elements of Cactus and enhance them. There are some great things in Cactus. We may not dispose of the term Cactus. It'd be a module, so to speak, of USIMS, right?
Okay.
But yes, there's replacement and enhancement of things. We're not going to throw things out, or that work, right? But it does need to be programmed, especially with all the changes with the licensure rules and things like that that are occurring right now. We're going to configure it and make it also adaptable. So in the future, if licensure type rules change or code changes on that, the system can adapt to that. So.
Okay, so we'll still have Cactus, but USIMS will have a major role in licensure.
Yes, because the educators will be able to log into one login and do or even the district personnel that, code and transmit the licensure information. They log into one place, but then they'll also have access to all other components within USIMS as well. So it's
Okay.
going to be really nice.
Thank you.
Very user-friendly. Almost there. By the way, I'm in charge of IT, so.
Jared,
Come on, Jared, help me. What's the code?
Can you read the code there?
Zero two zero two.
0202? Okay. This is the.
We're used to them down here.
Chair, if I may?
Yes.
Proceed?
Yes, please.
Okay, thank you. Sorry for the delay here. The purpose of this agenda item is to place in front of the board a recent audit. It was conducted by the Office of the Legislative Auditor General on public education reporting, and we concur with the findings. You see that in the management report and the backup documentation, which is actually the reporting requirements audit itself. And I'll pull that up real quick here. I already did. So what we're going to do today is, I was asked, well, do we want to invite the auditors from the Legislative Auditor General to go through the report? They are just an awesome team up there, and they really do help provide us ways or recommendations on how to continually improve across the whole education enterprise. So what the purpose of this is to do is myself, Darren, and Jeff will proceed with, of course, we have the response that Superintendent Dixon signed. That's a general response saying that we concur, but we want to really kind of get into the details here. Because what I hope to do, we always begin with the end in mind, and what we'd like to end with is that you recognize all of the different tie-ins that are occurring here for the betterment, if you will, of our 2 or 4 our LEAs, of reducing the amount of reporting requirements or requirements as a whole by way of the processes that we're taking with USIMS, and we'll get in a little bit deeper into this, with what you're going to, with board members on the Standards and Assessment Committee are going to talk about today with what's the? Assurances checklist, I should know that. The assurances checklist. So you're seeing all of the great synergy that's occurring around audits and our responses to them, and that I'll check with you at the end of this presentation to make sure that we fulfilled that goal, which is to demonstrate all the great things that we're doing to make life better and for our LEAs. So I want to start with the fact that, some of the general or that was brought out is the points made that LEAs use many funding sources for administrative purposes. I do want to point out, though, too, that Mark Peterson tracks this pretty well too. As far as the state goes, we're one of the lowest amounts that we put the lowest amount in funding into administrative purposes. That's a statistics that's out there. I'm not sure if we're the highest ranking state in that or what have you, but nevertheless, there's still a lot of funding and that's necessary to support administrative purposes because of all the reporting requirements that we have, either by way of the federal government, the legislature, board rule, and those are all pretty much displayed in here. The next thing that I want to develop a little bit more with you is that the auditors recognize, and this is found on page 3, that we have already made some efforts to make reporting more efficient. And again, that's my attempt here, so that, always beginning with the end in mind, that at the end of this presentation, you'll see or experience, and as you progress into your committees and your respective committees later today, that synergetic approach with us, the auditors, and of course the LEAs and themselves, is that we're already on top of this. Because on the outside or in the margin of page 3, they say one of USB's efforts to streamline reporting is considering the digital teaching and learning grant application, just as an example, but it will still comply with state administrative rules. So all these things are being considered, and again, to benefit the LEAs so that in the end we benefit the individual student. Now, what I'd like to do is just real quick refer you to page 5, which gives you, I won't read it word for word, but they gave you the audit scope and objectives. They were asked to evaluate the total number of reports required of LEAs and determine the costs associated with these reporting requirements. So what I want to do at this point is turn it over to Darren so that he can speak to the reports that are on the program side. Then we'll also, Jeff, you can jump in and when you want to, so that you see that we do recognize there's a lot of impact to them, and then Darren will be able to express what corrective actions we're taking along those lines. So.
Darren Nielsen, Assistant Superintendent of Student Learning, Utah State Board of Education. I want to go to page 8 on this audit and remind the board that many of your employees have come to work for you directly from LEAs. So the findings of this audit are not surprising to us as far as the number of reports that our LEAs have to complete and submit for various reasons and purposes. On page 8, the auditors who spent, 5 or 6 months here, a team of auditors focused solely on this task. They make a statement at the end of the second to last paragraph there that I'm just going to read because it really highlights the challenge that we face, one of the challenges. It says, however, so they attempted to create this master list of reports, one list that contains all the reports that LEAs have to complete for the various programs. And again, the context, they were here, a team of them, for half a year. During this process, we noted a lack of report coordination in USB departments. However, we do believe a comprehensive reporting list can be developed given defined time frame and intensive collaboration between USB departments. So when he talks about defined time frame, this is this comprehensive list of reports seems like it should be something that should be relatively easy for us to put together. Bring some staff together, have us meet for a few times each day for a week or two. I think this highlights that it's a bigger challenge than that. So as we talk about one of the findings, there in the very next page, they highlight just a few examples: 50 special education reports, 69 child nutrition, 148 charter school board reports, and then they pull out one of our smallest districts and bring that there to the surface. One of the things that's been going on with your staff prior to this audit and concurrently through the audit is, and it started in teaching and learning here, is there's a work group that's put together who's been working on consolidating plans and recognizing that we have all these plans. There's two focuses that you have: LEA plans that a district or an LEA has to complete, and then you have plans that the school level, the building principal or a committee at the school has to complete. So there's a significant number. We've focused primarily right now on the school level plans. An example of work that's been done to this point is last year when the TSSA Act was being put forward in the legislation, there was a plan, a TSSA plan associated with that. Your staff went up and met with the representatives who were bringing that bill forward and highlighted the challenge with bringing another new plan into the environment of our schools, and they were able to remove the school improvement plan and use the TSSA in place of that. Along with that, they removed a reading plan that was in statutory language. And so that's an example of a small win that's taken place already, but there's many more of those that have to take place in the coming weeks, months, and years probably as we work on this. I'm going to speak specifically on page 31 to the recommendations that are there. We recommend the State Board of Education prioritize how to consolidate individual programs. So this group of staff members, we have 8 USB staff members that are representing the different sections in this building. We have 3 representatives from LEAs who come in and meet. We have a standing appointment on a quarterly basis. And that group at our most recent meeting identified needs assessments as the part of all of these different plans. Many of them have a needs assessment that's required. So the work that we've taken on right now is to develop a consolidated comprehensive needs assessment that an LEA or school could complete rather than have to complete. There's more than 10 needs assessments depending on the programs that you're involved in right now. And it gets really confusing to a building principal as to what are we dealing with. And they don't view the school improvement effort as focused on one particular thing, but multiple things going on at the same time, which dilutes their efforts there. It talks about the board needing to select a cost-effective platform to manage that. So over the years, this board has tried to do that in a number of ways. We had the Utah Consolidated Application, or what in LEAs we called the UCA. It was a program that was designed to do this. It was available for a number of years, and it became ineffective, or maybe it was never effective. I wasn't working with it when it was first developed, but it got to where as an LEA we would commonly copy and paste from things from one year to the other and not spend the time necessary to really focus our resources on the problems at hand. That's transformed into the Utah grant system, replaced the UCA. We've also looked at a program called SPARK that does allow for consolidated federal plans. So another complexity there is we have title programs that are federal, and then you also have the Perkins program, which is federal, and it's difficult even to get those federal programs into the same platform. You have staff that have looked at that SPARK, a solution up to date. We haven't decided to take any action as far as a recommendation with that, as we continue to examine a solution that would meet our needs for state and federal consolidation. So those are some of the things that are going on currently and will be ongoing. And then it talks about we recommend the State Board of Education work with the legislature to amend relevant statutory language. And again, that's an ongoing, ever-present issue. that staff has a responsibility to monitor what's going on in the Hill and try to bring this audit actually helps us as we work with the legislative body to show that it's their own auditors have recommended consolidating and not continually putting new burdens on the LEAs. Anytime funding is available, there's typically going to be a plan and some kind of a accounting system that comes in place with that. So, Jeff, do you want to talk a little bit about the work you've been doing?
Yes. Jeff Van Holten, Policy Advisor for the State Board. So in addition to this audit and a lot of the work that is going forward in meeting the recommendations this audit comes out with, we've also been looking at Rule 108, which is our assurances document. That is going to be before the Standards Committee again today as we look further into the elements that are within the assurances document. One of the things that we've been doing at the request of Board Member Scott Hansen, we thank you for your efforts in trying to streamline all of this together. We've been looking at first the content of the document itself. There are federal, and maybe I should preface first, the assurance document, for those who may be unfamiliar with it, we send it out every year to LEAs, and it is a forward-looking document. It is a list of essentially yes, no's, and some boxes where you can upload a link to a policy. But essentially, the idea of the assurance document is, in the following school year, I assure that I promise to do the following things, yes or no. As you can imagine, we typically get all yeses. Everyone assures that they promise that they will do these things. And occasionally, we have policies where they are required to upload the link for the policy in the document itself so we can, if we choose as a state board and the staff, look to see if the policy exists and is up to date. There has definitely been confusion amongst staff and even with LEAs that we've discovered as we've gone forward in investigating this document as to whether it is backwards looking or forward looking. There are some who believe this is to be a, did I do this in the school year currently ending versus I promise to do this in the school year looking forward. So those are some small interesting things we'll talk more in depth today in the Standards Committee. Well, one of the things we wanted to also look at was the forms of evidence that were being collected and whether or not these things on the assurance document are already being looked at through a different process. So are we asking for an assurance on something that we're also going to audit that another program also is following up on a staff member and an LEA for? So you have on board docs, there is a document that has a breakdown of the assurance document, each assurance, and essentially, is staff here at USBE looking at that, the yes, no? Are there additional things being done in relation to external audit requirements for that same thing, or if program staff is already checking these things in addition to the assurance? And there's also a question of, are there other possible areas for evidence that we could be looking for in terms of these assurances? I will put out there that as we move forward in looking at the recommendations from this audit, we're also looking at all legal requirements in a general sense that an LEA needs to have to be compliant with the law. There are certain things on this list that have been added as a reminder to LEAs that it's a requirement. It is not a comprehensive list of every legal requirement that they have, which has been problematic in why are we making sure certain things are reminded but not other things. But the initial reason this document was created was to satisfy federal requirements that we have to get assurances on certain federal reporting and other compliance issues, and it has grown over time. So as we move forward in looking at the recommendations from this audit, and as we've been investigating this document, we are also looking at the idea of moving in the next 12 months or so in making a master list of legal requirements, which might shrink this list in terms of if the things that are on here are just for the sake of reminder, then it will exist somewhere else on a master list. But this also will continue to be required because there is some federal components that we have to assure to the federal government in order to maintain our funding from them. But that is the work that we've been doing in this particular piece of trying to make this document more meaningful, as well as less of a headache for LEAs and making sure that it's not just duplicating other efforts in other areas, which is something that really speaks to what this audit was getting at.
Questions, comments from board members? Board Member Davis?
When all is said and done in the process of streamlining and doing what we can in response to the audit, is it possible to quantify, like, we saw some quantifiable data in the audit report. Is it possible when, after we've gone through this whole process, to see what the reduction is on the burden to the LEA and get that in some type of a quantifiable piece of data?
So I certainly think so. I think that, because as you see, it's deep in the audit, but and that's why I wanted to bring out the discussion point or the talking point related to how much they spend on administrative costs to meet the requirements or the reporting requirements for whether it's federal, state, local, all of that. What I anticipate is by a combination of consolidating the reports, eliminating those that are unnecessary, and by way of the systems that we're implementing, for example, USIMS, where we can go and just pull the data and create the report on our own, saving time for them to export and configure to, meet the current. I really believe that's where you'll see the savings. Now, does that mean, I want to be clear, I'm not advocating or saying that, that'll result in reductions in the workforce. What it will do is allow for them to reprioritize their efforts, the staff efforts towards other things, ultimately, I believe, towards classroom type, or school level support on that. So I do believe that, and we'll track the quantifiable data that says how many we reduced, and then we'll get input from the LEAs on what they ended up doing as a result of what we anticipate as savings to the burden of, all the staff time it's taking right now to meet all of the different requirements. The one key piece that I would like to point out too is with the systems, I really feel strongly that will eliminate redundancy, right? That by everybody being able to log in with one login and see everything in one big station or system, right? They can go and pull all that out, and then we, staff up here, because some might have access to Cactus where data resides, but then they don't have access to Seats where data resides. And so then, they're asking for the same data, and the LEAs are like, well, I just gave that to financial ops. Why can't you just go over, or why can't you get into that system and do that? So it will save a lot of rework as well. This process that we're taking both with systems and identification of redundancy.
Board Member Lear?
This may not be an apples. Can I ask a question? May I ask a question of
You
these
bet.
gentlemen? This may not be an apples to apples comparison, but when the board and the staff's prompting and the legislature's prompting decided to very carefully scrutinize school fee waiver reporting and compliance, the board or the office added or reassigned, 4 or 5 maybe-ish employees to that scrutiny, so that if we said we were going to do it, we would really do it and do it with fidelity. Is this going to require the same, and this feels like it's more, going to require more monitoring, because I think it is really pointless to spend all the work you folks are spending to identify all the assurances in the reports if we aren't going to have the capacity to carefully, persistently provide monitoring and even-handedly.
Yeah.
So that's the question.
Because we're doing the business case. Okay, so I'll answer this question, Chair. It is an apples-to-apples comparison, because you're right. I mean, we do have to have the ability to follow up. So what we've done is, and Mark Peterson came in and he says, hey, we are the lowest state in administrative costs. We still do need additional personnel to meet the requirements of the monitoring that will take place as a result of the actions that we take here. So we've been developing a business case to ask or request additional FTE so that, to Board Member Davis's point, are we going to be able to see the cost savings? I think, someone might be going, well, so you have to spend more money and add more personnel. True. However, those personnel will assist in the ability for the LEAs to reduce their manpower requirements. And then they will also hold which if I understand your question correctly, they'll be able to come in behind and monitor all of the different changes and drill deeper down into some of the assurances that are being made and aspects like that. We're really balancing that equation by way of this business case that we're going to bring, that is going to be presented for the first time during the legislative requests, budget requests today. That's, so if I may, just real quick, that's why I wanted to say we always begin with the end in mind, so that you're seeing the synergy that we're creating and the efforts that are being made to build efficiency with what we do at this level and reduce the burden on the LEAs at the same time.
Can I ask a quick follow-up?
You bet.
So how many, I mean, this, I won't hold you to this, but
Okay.
how many FTE are you anticipating? And then will these FTE, one of the problems I've always had with these assurances is, again, similar to the fee waiver kind of discussion, is that you can check and make sure that ABC School District, FY's, Z charter school has made the submissions and said yes, but have you had, there's never been the kind of deeper analysis of, have we looked at what they're assuring? Is it accurate? Is it more than just a promise? So how many employees, and then do you anticipate there'll be that deeper level analysis?
So right now, and these are in the areas of teaching and learning, CTE, and student support. We're looking at 7 to 8 employees, because if you recall, over the last 2 to 4 years, we've arrived, I feel strongly, at the financial ops capability, where we've added employees in that area just for the financial ops centric, drill downs or assurances part on that. We've really spent a lot of time and effort both with systems and personnel there. So these 7 to 8 FTEs are more on the program side, because when you look at the assurances table, it's not just financial ops, it's law and licensing, it's all these things. So this latest ask will be for the 8, and I feel strongly that would give us the systems, though, too. It's not just people. The systems that we've been bringing to you, USIMS and all that, the use of those systems by these personnel will get to what right is as far as compliance monitoring and the ability to drill down in the assurances form to test, if you will, the controls that are around, whatever that assurance is being made by the LEAs, without burdening the LEAs, because the systems and the personnel will be able to do that. I mean, they'd have to contact the LEAs and work with them on things, but we really feel that it'll be a professional and proactive process rather than a reactive process, because now we'll have systems and personnel that meet that capability.
And one more, just one
You
more
bet.
quick follow-up. Will these individuals also be able to provide technical assistance?
Yes. Yeah, so when we hire these individuals, we'll hire them based on experience and by way of that hiring process, it should and will, I really feel confident it will draw out their capabilities by way of their technical expertise. Darren, who sits to my right, is one of the most strongest, knowledgeable people I've ever met in education. And did you hear his opening remark? He has experience. He knows what it's like in the LEA. He comes into me and he says, hey, this doesn't make sense, right? Or you're going to do that too. These are the type of employees that we're going to seek, is this gentleman to my right.
Can't clone a Darren, though, which would be nice. Back to our Star Trek analogy.
Well, but I am building that in USIMS, ma'am, so I haven't
So
told you
maybe.
that. Okay, full disclosure, it'll have a cloning capability. No, I wish we could. Yeah, I really do. But there are others like Darren out there, and we're going to tap into the LEAs. The most benefit you can ever give to those that serve is to use those that serve to that, to bring them up here to teach and instruct and continually learn and improve. So,
Thanks. Thank you.
okay.
Board Member Scott Hansen.
Just a quick comment that kind of goes to what Carol was talking about, and maybe Jeff can talk about. In the project that he's working on, he's actually looking at the assurances that are made and what evidence is to be provided or is provided now or could be provided, trying for it not to be burdensome, but to add some depth to that assurance document so that there's something behind the check the box. And I think that's an important thing that we need to do to maybe push our administrators to think a little bit, but also to have that next level so that we can actually benefit from that as well by looking at that and maybe seeing model policies and things like that by clicking a few links. So, and maybe Jeff can comment to that further.
Chair, if I may.
Yes, please.
Yes, so that is the intent as we look at the assurance document is to make it more meaningful and substantive, to make sure that the evidences we are collecting make sense, or if there really is no evidence, the example we'll talk about today in Standards Committee is the Pledge of Allegiance. I'm not really sure what evidence you can provide on a document except saying yes or no that you have done it. And there is not currently staff here that monitors whether the Pledge of Allegiance is conducted, but it is a legal requirement. So do we just leave that as a legal requirement and maybe move it to a legal requirement master list rather than an assurance document? But that's a lot of the things we'll be looking at as well, kind of streamline those things.
Any other questions, comments? I'm not seeing any. Do you have any closing?
No closing remarks. That concludes our report. And well, I do want to just check in and say, do board members see the synergy that's occurring with the findings from the audits and then the progression we're making? And it's all in line with your strategic plan. We're really trying to make sure we get the right people and the right systems in place to benefit the individual student for years to come at your direction and under Superintendent Dixon's leadership. So.
Okay. Well, thank you.